indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have an item for public hearing. It is 6:32. I'd like to open up the public hearing. Item 5A, the Cibolo Economic Development Corporation will hold a public hearing related to the expenditure of the corporation's funds for on-site improvements for business to promote or develop new or expanded business enterprises. In quotations, Business Improvement Grant Project at 413 North Main Street in Cibolo, Texas. So the public hearing is open. Does anybody like to speak on the public hearing? All right, going once, going twice. Okay, it is 6:33. I'd like to close the public hearing. Before I read item 6, is there any citizens to be heard?
Sir.
Okay, well then I'll go ahead and skip that. Okay, item number 7, consent agenda. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the Board of Directors and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered individually. Item A, approval of minutes, for the July 20, 2023 meeting, August 17th, 2023 meeting, and September 21st, 2023 regular call meeting. Item B, approval of financial and sales tax reports for August and September of 2023. And C, approval of reimbursement to the City of Cibolo General Fund for staff time working on Cibolo Economic Development Corporation projects for September and October 2023. If anybody wants to discuss or not, then I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve items 7A, B, and C as written.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Okay, item 8A, presentation, discussion, and/or possible action regarding business improvement grant application in the amount of up to $15,000 reimbursed for on-site improvements for an existing business located at 413 North Main Street. Ms. Ellis.
Good evening, board. Since we do have new board members, I just kind of want to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Isabella Ellis. I am our Economic Development Coordinator, so I oversee our business retention and expansion program for the city. So part of that is our Business Improvement Grant, as we also call our BIG grant, which is a facade improvement grant that supports exterior improvements that promote a visually appealing downtown that attracts tourists and residents to the Old Town District and the FM 78 corridor. So today, what we're bringing forth to you is that the owners of the Cibolo Grange are requesting a business improvement grant in the amount of $15,000. This nonprofit business is located at 413 North Main Street, which is located within the Old Town District and is eligible for the business improvement grant. The owners have indicated that they will use this grant funding for accessibility improvements to be able to increase access and provide a means of inclusion for visitors of all abilities. The estimated cost of the project totals to $36,602.50, which will qualify for the maximum 50% reimbursement of $15,000. The economic impact analysis reports a net benefit to the city of Cibolo of $2,844 over 10 years. We also do have representation here today from the Grange that I would be happy to invite up to the podium to answer any questions you guys might have about the application.
All right, please. Thank you for coming, sir.
Well, thank you very much. My name is David Weaver. Pleasure to be here. And I just want to tell you, thank you for the opportunity just to be here to present this for this possibility of the grant.
Okay, perfect. Just a couple questions. Have you started any work?
I have not.
You have not, okay. I guess
The permits are in hand, and
Okay.
so we were on hold waiting for this date to come up because this is going to be pivotal as to what we can actually get done.
I'm sorry, it's going to be what?
This will be pivotal.
Oh, pivotal,
Yes.
understood.
Uh-huh.
Okay, perfect.
Pardon my Pennsylvania accent.
No. I'm hard of hearing too, sir, so I was an engineer, I got it. So in your own words, just tell me a little bit about your project and what you plan on doing.
Okay, with the project, the Grange membership, we had voted several years back to support the special needs community, which is also, not only the disadvantaged and the military community. So we have PTSD support, we have a social group that we run out of there, and now we also have the senior center and the Meals on Wheels that also operates out of there. The parking area is not good, we'll say that. We have a metal ramp that used to be ADA specified, but it's not ADA anymore. And
Okay.
people with the wheelchairs and the canes and stuff
Yep.
like that, trying to get in and out of the facility is not good. We've had 2 people fall already, so we've got to do something to make accessibility. So the plan that we have put together is coming from the street all the way up to the building. It's going to be just like Morgan's Wonderland out there. There's not going to be any rises, steps, bridges, or anything like that. It's going to be one smooth platform. So the power chairs have wheelchairs have a straight ramp right inside the building. It'd have an 8-foot landing on it. It'd be all cement.
Okay.
And so that's going to be
That's nice.
the big purpose for that.
Okay, perfect, perfect.
And then I will throw in, if I may,
Please.
that the Grange is throwing even more money into it. So because of the increased use of the facility now, we've run out of room. And so we're going to be adding an addition on the side of the building. And it'll be a 16 by 32-foot addition room, so we can better house the people coming out to the senior center and stuff like that.
Okay, nice, nice.
Did I see something about you guys were gonna be doing some parking as well?
Yeah, the whole parking area towards the Slaughter School area, we're gonna have that all paved across there. And again, when people are getting out of their cars, we can't have them be walking through mud and stuff like this, so we have to do something.
Agreed. Any other questions?
Do you know how long it's gonna take to get this project done?
Once we start it, it'll be done in a week. Solis Masonry
Oh, okay.
is already, he's got the plans and everything, he's ready to go, he's just waiting for us to give him the magic wand. He says he can do it in 3 days. I'm gonna give him 5.
Sounds reasonable. Sounds reasonable, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions? You have questions?
I just want a question.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Hello.
you
What's
doing?
your name again?
Dave.
Mr. David, I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure I said your name. So is this, I just want to make sure I understand, so is this like aesthetic improvements, or are you trying to come up to code? Are you out of compliance with anything? You mentioned about ADA, is everything other than that ADA compliant? Are there any issues there
Both-
you're
both are
concerned
issues.
about?
The ADA compliance is to the entrance coming into the building, all right? So it's not completely even, and because the door's swinging to the outside, the landing has to be larger than what it is on a
Right.
typical ramp, all
Okay.
right? And so then we have the accessibility or the smoothness on the outside too. But these improvements are also going to be most definitely, it's going to make the appearance of the facility much, much better.
Right.
So in preparation for all the work, we've already had 3 of the pecan trees removed because their locations weren't good and
Right.
stuff like this. So we've already started to do that, and that made the facility look a little bit better and stuff like that as well. So we're trying to do some improvements down there just to keep things growing. The Cibolo Grange has been a part of the community, well, back since 1941. The Grange itself was instrumental in Texas A&M, the start of Texas A&M. We were instrumental in getting the fire station up here started. I mean, we have a long history within Cibolo. We have a lot of different activities, and it's not just the seniors, the special needs community stuff, but we also, people use the hall for low-cost birthday parties and baby showers, and we're running 7 days a week down there.
Is the facility going to be available while this construction is
Yes, it
happening, or
will be.
will it be
No, it will be.
out of use?
So once we get started, we're gonna have, we also just recently picked up PAC 51, the Cub Scouts and the Eagle Scouts, and they're doing some projects and everything. So we're gonna get these young men to help us pick up that metal ramp. It's aluminum ramp, so it's not too heavy. We're gonna move that to the back side of the building.
So they'll still have access,
So
right?
we'll still have
Okay.
access, the ramp will be there and everything, so it'll all work good. Yeah, we can't shut down anything over there.
Sure,
And
sure.
when are you planning to get started?
As soon as I get the go-ahead.
Soon as you get there.
This has been ongoing for a while, so I've been planning things in my mind, different alternative paths to try and get as much done as we can get done. So I had the game plan there, I have the contractors lined up.
And you already have the permits, because I heard
And I
you
have
say
the
you already
permits,
have the
and
permits.
so the only thing I'm lacking is the funding. So when I said this was pivotal, It's whether or not I get the ramp done and the parking lot, or just the ramp, because we need the extra space, we need the room. And so the money that the Grange has is gonna be expended on the room. We're short $2,500 on the parking lot and everything else, so the Grange is covering that. So it's not like we don't have an interest in the parking lot and everything being done. We are contributing money to that. But the room addition, then we're gonna be building out ourselves.
Building out. Oh, you're gonna be
Perfect.
doing that yours. So this would be for the accessibility issues
This
and
is-
for the parking lot,
Yes,
that portion of the
that is
park.
correct. Yeah, like I said, we had a couple people, try and cross over the ditch and everything out there, and they
Right.
slip and fall and, you know, stuff like this, and so I just need to get that fixed up.
Of course.
I don't wanna see anybody get hurt, we've been fortunate up to this point.
All right, well, I appreciate it, sir. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So I'd like to go ahead and open for a motion. Come on, man. Gotta do it.
I make a motion to approve the big application for the business located on 413 North Main Street for the amount up to $15,000.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you for coming out, sir, and we're looking forward to your improvements.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I know. Okay, so we're going to shift the items around here, obviously, to, right?
We could still do B, we wanted to shift it after.
We
B,
want
if
to,
that's
we want
okay.
to shift it out because Ms. Miranda has, okay,
Okay.
sure. All right, so item 8B, presentation of Cibolo EDC financial statements by City of Cibolo Director of Finance, Anna Miranda.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Miranda in just a second, but just wanted to give you some background on this. So the City of Cibolo's Finance Department does oversee the finances of the Economic Development Corporation, and so make sure that we're compliant, make sure that we're doing things the right way, and we had asked Ms. Miranda to come and just give kind of a review of what the status of the finances are for the EDC, especially because we do have some new board members who are joining us. As we look at developing and attracting more industry to the city, if we're looking at incentives or other ways that the EDC can support economic development, we thought it was appropriate and important to make sure you know what your finances look like right now so you can be informed in those future decisions.
Sure.
So with that, turn it up.
All right, let's go. Good evening. Thank you for coming.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for welcoming me. I don't get to come very often, so.
You can come anytime.
We're on third Thursday of every month, so.
I am happy to be here. I know there are some new board members tonight, so welcome to you also. I wanted to go over the Economic Development Corporation. It began with sales tax authorized in November of 2006. So November of 2006, because our fiscal year runs October 1 through September 30th. November of 2006 was actually fiscal year 2007 with a partial year sales tax of $48,000. Our first full year of sales tax for the EDC in fiscal year 2008 was $118,710. Our last completed year, fiscal year 23, which ended September 30th, sales tax for the EDC was $1,127,622. So sales tax grew by 9.5 times in the last 15 years. The EDC recently issued bonds for $4.1 million in 2021, and that was for land acquisition along FM 78. And as you know, that is in negotiations or with contract with the city for that area. $415,000 remains in that fund for capital projects. This is a chart of our sales tax history. Average growth in sales tax over the last 5 years has been 18.3%, and over the last 10 years, 19.1%. We have budgeted 18.1% for fiscal year 24. Population has grown an average of 6% in the same time period, with inflation and new growth in business accounting for the rest of the sales tax growth. I wanted to note also that commercial property values in Cibolo have grown by 5.5 times, from 62 million in 2014 to 345 million in 2023. Those are assessed values. A brief overview of fiscal year 23. These are unaudited figures, but we are confident in year-end balances for revenues at this point. Sales tax revenue at 1.1 million was just under the sales tax projection of 1,141,000, and that's it was 1.2% just under that target. Our interest revenue more than made up for that by exceeding budget by 850%. For expenditures, budgeted 1,338,000. Of that, 743,000 was expended in FY23. Again, these are unaudited numbers, but are not expected to change much, but we are still receiving final invoices for fiscal year 23. We had a positive budget variance of 595,000, the majority of which is in economic development grants, which were approved in 2023 or prior, but not yet expended. So waiting for compliance issues and for projects to be completed. So much of the grants will be rolling over to fiscal year 24, and also any unexpended funds for professional studies, the IH-10 corridor study and the EDC strategic plan that are in progress right now will also be rolled over into fiscal year 24. To calculate the total increase or change in fund balance, revenue less expenditures in the EDC totaled 466.7 thousand. So that increases our fund balance for the end of the year, and 8.5 thousand increase in bond funds. So for a total increase to fund balance of 475,000 in fiscal year 23.
So just want to make sure. So that means we're 475,000 positive over what we budgeted for. So what would be our final amount actually in the bank?
That's the
Is
next
that the
slide.
next? Okay, just wanted to just double.
So the balance sheet for
Okay.
the EDC, we don't show fixed assets on our balance sheet, but total assets in cash and receivables between the EDC and the bond funds is $2.5 million, and it is shown in separate columns so you know what the total is for each. Bond funds are restricted for capital expenditures. Of that 2.5 million, or almost $2.6 million, the EDC has liabilities of 70,000, almost 71,000, leaving a fund balance of 2.5 million. So that is what is available for future use for the EDC. It's 2.1 million in the EDC fund and 415,000 in the bond fund. And again, the 415,000 is restricted for capital expenditures.
And also to anything that supports that capital expenditure as well, right?
It must be capital in nature,
Yeah, okay.
because we are paying for those bonds over a period of 20 years. So we
Okay.
want to make sure that the expenditure lasts as long as we're paying the bonds.
Sure.
So the 2.1 is what, if it happened today, which is not, is what will,
The
Be going to
2.1
that.
million is what is available in fund balance in the EDC. So for future maybe incentives that the board wanted to offer to new businesses, that 2.1 million is available. Typically, we don't pay salaries out of the Economic Development Corporation except to reimburse the general fund for staff time that is for specific compliant projects, EDC eligible projects. So that 2.1 million is what the board can consider for future projects.
and that's for the fiscal year, right?
That is the carry forward.
Right.
Next year's budget, and we'll go over that. I don't know if I put next year's budget
Sure.
total, but typically what's budgeted is expenditures are typically less than revenue. So we are growing fund balance annually, making it an increase to fund balance every year. to fund projects. There may be a year where you want to fund a $2 million project, and then you'll see that fund balance decrease quite a bit.
So it is
But
the
this is
carry-
like your savings account.
It's a carryover, right?
It's a
We
carryover.
don't start from a zero base.
Right.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. that's
So
fine.
they're not
Just trying to-
appropriated, so these are
Right.
4B dollars, these are tax revenue that we get. When everybody purchases something in the city limits, 1/4% goes into our fund. Yeah, so it just,
It does come from, the revenues do come from sales tax in the city.
yes,
A quarter, like,
Marcus.
Marcus mentioned.
Do I have my name? Oh, I don't
No,
know.
sorry.
We're in the process of ordering them for tight budget. You're 2.1 million, we'll order some.
With the,
Blaming
with the
you,
2.19.
Out of gold, yes.
Sorry, yes, go ahead,
Mattingly.
please. Yes, that's
Yes, like you mentioned, it is 1/4 cent sales tax that goes into the EDC. We have a 1/4 cent that goes into street maintenance, and then a full cent that goes into the general fund of the city. And so that has grown to $2.1 million, and is available for a future appropriation of the board. But we do budget each fiscal year on its own revenue and expenses, right? So for fiscal year '24, we've budgeted $1.3 million in revenue, and we've budgeted, I really can't tell you off the top of my head, but less than $1 million in expenditures. So we anticipate to increase fund balance in FY '24 as well.
cool.
I'm good.
And so you can see that fund balance has increased drastically over the past 4 years. 2020 saw a big increase, 2021. The stacked bar chart shows EDC in green, and the orange is the bond funds that were added in 2021.
Is there a time frame on when the bonds have to be used for capital expenditures, or is this something that we can carry over?
Typically, you want to spend your bond funds within 36 months of issuing them. About 90% of those bonds should be expended by then. I don't recall what the total bond issue was for. Was it 4 million?
4.1.
4.1. And so that has been expended, the 90% of that has been expended.
Yeah, so the rest of the bond money is gonna be for, well, at least our intent is to use it for any other expenditures during the, if you will, transformation of that land or sell, or if we wanna do any improvements during that process. So,
Is that on the 78?
that's the land that we purchased on FM 78, yes.
13
Yes. More than that.
This chart shows a month-by-month sales tax receipts for the last 2 years, and the 23, against the 23 forecast and the 24 forecast. So we have not received any sales tax revenue in fiscal year '24, so we don't have an actual number up there yet. But the dotted lines or the dashed lines show the forecast, and the solid lines are actual. You can see that halfway through 2023, our actual line is above the forecast and just under the forecast for the latter part of the
During
year.
summer, yeah.
So we did not meet the forecast for the last 6 months of the year. Budget highlights for fiscal year '23. Again, I mentioned that the sales tax was projected at 15.5% over fiscal year '22, and we were just 1.2% under that target. Our fiscal year '24 sales tax projected is 17.9% over fiscal year '23. Restaurants open last quarter are exceeding expectations, so we had some information on what was opening, and we had some sales tax estimates for those businesses, and those businesses so far have exceeded what our forecasts are, so we hope that that continues. And we have some early openings of some businesses. Chick-fil-A and Mod Pizza are actually opening a little sooner than anticipated, so that should help our sales tax numbers as well. There are several other businesses, as you know, in development in the Central Business District. And also, you're aware of new multifamily construction that will add to the population base. Again, I want to mention that $480,000 from fiscal year '23 for grants that were approved prior to fiscal year '23 but not completed will be carried forward to fiscal year '24. And that will be via budget amendment. We'll bring a budget amendment to City Council to shift those funds over. And that's really all I have in my presentation. Are there any questions related to any of that?
There? No? Okay. All right, thanks, Brenda, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, now we want to switch, which is letter G. Which talks about the, okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna skip down to item AG, discussion, direction, and/or action regarding update on recent break-ins and damage at EDC property. But also too, does that include
It does.
the potential use of the fire department
It
using
does.
the property?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to, okay. It doesn't say it in there, but, okay,
Yeah,
Sure.
it's in the staff report. We talk about it.
okay. I read it, no, I read it.
Good evening, board. Like Isabella did, I'll introduce myself for our new members. My name's Alora Wackles. I am the Economic Development Manager here for the City of Cibolo, and I'm tasked with commercial recruitment as well as incentives and contract management. So it's nice to meet y'all. Okay, so this item is discussing the property on FM 78 that the EDC owns. As our existing board members know, but our new board members have not probably been aware, there are 2 houses out on that property, as well as a detached garage, and then a small building that's kind of surrounded by windows that's familiar, or I can't say that word, that is known as the Red Ball Cafe, right? So it's a small building. We have had, because those homes are vacant out there, we've had some break-ins. They do back into the creek, and we do have some individuals who traverse back there and have been coming into the houses and using them. Our last incident that we reported to the board was July, I believe, of this year. And we've taken a number of different kind of measures for safety, but this most recent has been boarding up the property to try to prevent individuals from going out there. So what I'm here to do is to provide you with an update on the most recent break-in that occurred after the last time we met and boarded up the houses. This happened on Saturday, September 30th. One of our EDC members, Vice President Justin Treesh, who's not here, he has done a good job of going out and checking on the property from time to time when he's in the area, just to see if there's any damage to the houses, if it looks like anyone has been in them. He did this on that Saturday. He was at Nimitz Park and decided to jump over and check on it. He did notice, and I've included in your packet, that there was some additional damage. There was an additional break-in. It looked like the front door of the white house that's out there was broken. The Red Ball Cafe, the door plate, which is the metal part that goes into the door, was kicked off, and it looked like people had been in there. There was some trash and whatnot in there. And it looked like someone had tried to maybe pry some of the wood off of one of the garage doors. Okay. So he called the police, filed a report, and they came out. On that Monday following, we did, staff worked with Public Works to have them go out there. They actually met with Mr. Treesh, and they reviewed what could be done, how to kind of remedy the situation, reboard up some things that maybe hadn't been boarded up. They also did replace the door plate, I believe, on the Red Ball Cafe. However, they did not lock that. They did not board up those windows. And the reasoning behind that is because, as the EDC has expressed, y'all would like to preserve that building, that structure, for a future use. And if they didn't want further damage to be caused, and so instead of being able to just, or being forced to break windows, leave the door unlocked, right? So we have looked at a number of things on how to protect that property out there from future break-ins. And as we've brought to the board, there's the option, of course, to, look at, fencing. So you will have in your packet, our Parks and Rec department did provide from a third party a bid for doing some temporary fencing, sort of like an event style fencing. I will say that we did have discussions with the police department about whether or not fencing would even be a worthwhile endeavor, and they said likely not. It's not going to really prevent anybody from getting in those houses, but we wanted to provide that as an option to the board if there is anything additionally that you would like to do to try to prevent any entrance into the house. And then another option that we have, and we've mentioned it before, but we wanted to give additional information, and we're lucky to have a guest here to speak with y'all a little bit more in detail about it this evening, but is the use of allowing the fire department to do training at those houses. There are certain trainings that the fire department does, and Chief Troncoso will speak to that, and as far as what, if any, damage to the structures themselves could be expected. But the benefit to having those houses turned over to the fire department for training, if that is what the board so wishes, is that the presence out there would help to deter, hopefully, future break-ins. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and relinquish it over to the chief.
All right. Welcome, Chief.
Well, thank you. Well, good evening, board. Got a little presentation here for you. The main photos in this presentation is of 2900 Cibolo Valley Drive, the old where the Legacy Christian School is now. There was a two-story house there. We acquired that structure and did some training. Excuse me. And there's a couple of videos or a couple of photos of the City Hall Annex that when they were remodeling that, we actually did some training there.
Okay.
So, and I'll try to point that out to you.
I don't think that's in our packet though, right? Oh. Okay, okay. I'll turn around and
Correct, yeah.
I'll watch the movie.
Yeah. So, obviously, we're Mario Troncoso, Cibolo Fire Chief. Just want to go over training objectives for acquired structures. And if you see that the middle,
Middle center?
yes, right there on the top with the chainsaw, that's actually the top of the roof of that structure there on Cibolo Valley Drive. So a couple of things that we did accomplish at that property that we acquired was apparatus placement, forcible entry, search and rescue, hose deployment, flow and move procedures, ground ladder and ladder truck operations, vertical and horizontal ventilation, and firefighter survival. So in regards to the ventilation, we do have a smoke machine that does theatrical smoke. So one of the conversations that I had with Kelsey is that, you know, it is boarded up, and that kind of helped us because if we use a theatrical smoke, it'll keep the smoke or the visibility in there. So that'll help us in our search and rescue. So that's the house that we did acquire. I would say probably over a year and a half, maybe 2 years now.
Yeah.
And we had total access to that house. So I guess that's one thing that the board will decide is that, you know, what would y'all allow us to do? You know, they actually wanted us, the contractor wanted us to burn it to the ground because they were going to demolish it. Unfortunately, we cannot do that.
Sure?
Yes.
See why not?
Sure. But believe me, staff wanted us, they wanted to do it, but there was a lot more stuff that we could do with it still standing, because there's a lot of rooftop, there's a lot of windows, there's a lot of doors, there's a lot of breaching of interior walls and exterior walls. So, and we'll go through that as I go through that. So if you look at, you know, when we do have a ladder truck and we do have pumpers, what's unique is that right now our staff goes out to subdivisions in park to try to use the ladder truck on 2 stories and single stories. So the property that's out there now, there is a 2-story house and a single-story house. So, you know, that property is unique because it gives us an opportunity on how we're going to place these apparatuses, you know, at a residential with some property. Then, of course, when we go into subdivisions, we actually try to manipulate, you know, where's the ladder truck going to go? Where's the engine going to go? Typically, you want your first arriving to leave room for the ladder. You always want a ladder to be placement on a corner. And with that property, we do have different options that we can train on that as well. Forcible entry. We do have a forcible entry door at one of our fire stations. That's the photo there on the left, the blue door. But then again, it really does give us an opportunity to actually break a door on an actual house. So, and that's one thing that obviously if you say, hey, we want to keep the doors intact, then of course we won't rip any of the doors off. But that gives us an opportunity to have some training to breach interior and exterior doorways. Search and rescue. You know, we do vent enter search, and that's coming from the outside of the structure and go inside. And so if we had all the windows intact, then of course we can fill it up with smoke, and then either we bust the window or we just open it up and we can gain access that way. So that's one of the techniques that we do is we do like to have that visibility down low so we can build that muscle memory of grabbing a wall and searching and communicating with zero or no visibility. Hose deployments. So that's as we position, goes back to positioning of the apparatus. You know, our deployments are pulling hose from the fire truck to the front door or to the garage. Everybody thinks that when a fire department pulls it, we're going to go in through the front door. That's not the case. You know, we're going to go wherever the best ease to gain access to the fire. And it's a game time situational. You know, it's not the same, we always go to the front door. We may have to go to the garage. We may have to go into the Charlie side and come in from the rear. You know, we may have to just abandon, not even go to the first floor, and we're going to gain access through the second floor. Flow and move. As we do gain entry, then we charge the lines, and that's one thing that we did in this structure, that we actually flowed water. And it's kind of like one of those things that, you know, if you have a football team and you run all these plays and you run all the way to the goal line, but you don't cross the finish line, you stop. And that's some of the things that we do with some of the houses that are under construction. We talk to the contractor, and they let us do so much, but then again, they're still working on the house, and then of course they don't want us to break windows or flow water and stuff like that. So we were able to flow water down the hallways, advance hose lines up to stairwells, and then of course in the rooms and stuff like that. So it gives us an opportunity to do flow paths and procedures and movement throughout the house. So that's another good opportunity for us. Then, of course, throwing ground ladders and using the aerial, like I mentioned before, is actually deploying the ladders off the truck and putting them on the second story and advancing, going to the second story and breaching windows and going in that way. Then, of course, placement of the ladder truck so we can, how do we manipulate on a corner? Can we reach the second story, you know, and that window? Then, of course, vertical ventilation. That's one technique that we always teach. And since I've been with the Cibolo Fire Department, been with the organization a very long time, we used it one time here within the last year. How long? About 6 months ago. And we knew the technique, and then we had an opportunity to use it. And it was amazing how we were able to do the vertical ventilation, and we thought the fire was in the attic, in which it wasn't. It was in a master closet, but it was full of smoke. Visibility was down. We could not find a seat of the fire. And then once we did our vertical ventilation, we could just see the lift of the smoke. And it was like, we looked at each other like, we should be doing this a lot.
Every time.
Every time. But there again, if you're not trained,
Sure.
we're not going to ask you to do it. And it is very dangerous, you know, because, and you can go on YouTube right now and look at videos, and if you're not sounding the roof, and you'll go right through. You'll go right through. There's a video that my nephew sent me. He's a captain in Katy, and they had a Katy firefighter go through the roof because they were going to ventilate, and they went straight through, and they were able to pull them out.
Yeah.
So, and that's one thing that, you know, we talk about it, we teach, but it's there again. It's where the rubber hits the road. We're able to throw a ladder, go up on the roof, and actually cut shingles through tar paper and do that technique. And then, of course, firefighter survival. You know, we teach ourselves that if we get ourselves in a pickle, can we breach an exterior wall from the inside out and exit out for our safety, okay? And then if you look at the second photo, there is a firefighter technique in one room. How do I exit? You know, utilizing the sheetrock, making our own little ladder, if you will. And then, of course, on the far right is firefighter already breached the exterior wall Isabella, on the middle with the firefighter going in, can you cursor over it? That is the video? That one right there, yeah. So that's at the City Hall Annex, and they did some breaching of the walls, and people think like, you know, what are y'all doing? Are y'all taking load-bearing walls? We are not. And so they spent some time moving the 2x4s over so they can gain access so they can go into the other room. So it's amazing that if there's a will, there's a way, and with all that gear. And that's one thing that if we build that muscle memory in a controlled environment and utilizing these structures, heaven forbid, we're at a real structure and that memory will come back and then they can actually deploy the training that they gained. He didn't get stuck, but. And if, do y'all have any questions?
So, questions, well, yeah, I got a couple questions and a couple conditions.
Yep.
One, I just want to let you know, Chief, that I'm 100% in agreement with you guys using those properties, right? I mean, I think providing that as a training tool for our first responders is 100%, there's no reason why we shouldn't do that, right? And so I'm going to obviously vote yes, okay? The only thing I do ask, like when you say like you bust the door, right, and you do the forced entry through the door, you probably only can probably do that once.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm okay with that. The only thing that I would just ask, and I saw that you guys did entry through the exterior of the structure, is if we do that, can we patch it back up where, where nobody else can get in there when you guys vacate the property after your training? And my second question is, how often will you do it?
Well, so in regards of as we gain entry and we take doors off, we can get some plywood and screw it back in, because obviously we want to make sure.
Yeah.
And there again, if you would rather not, because that one technique that we use is that we breach an exterior wall. If it'd be better off to leave the brick intact, because that's going to be better than a piece of plywood,
Of course.
then we'll leave that intact, and we can just focus, because in both of those houses, there's a lot of work that can be done just by flowing and moving
Okay.
and breaching the interior walls. We can leave the exterior walls intact
Okay.
and not even have to bother with that, because we can, correct me if I'm wrong, we can do a lot more inside flowing and moving. And I guess another question is, can we flow water inside the structure?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I want
that right there is I think is crucial for us, because we can actually deploy the hoses from the vehicles and getting through the front door and working on our flowing and moving, those friction points, and actually going up the stairwell and flowing water and stuff like that.
I mean, if it's ideal, I would like you to make those properties as less inhabitable as possible. I don't want anybody to squat there anymore.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Right? I want you to flow water in there. I want you to knock walls down. I want you to burn it up. I want you to make that thing look like a haunted house, right?
Okay.
Scare people away, deter them from going in there. And I would say yes, as far as the exterior brick, please leave that alone, just
Okay.
because we don't want to mess, we don't want to try to patch it up. I mean, obviously our
Oh, for
intent
sure.
was to keep people out, but I think it's a great opportunity for, joint training. And would you just do it with Cibolo, or would you do joint training with like shirts?
First we would start with Cibolo, and you gotta remember, I got 3 stations.
Okay, yeah.
So it takes a lot,
Okay.
especially to get the reps.
Okay.
And then sometimes if they're not supervised good enough, they'll take advantage and like, hey, well, this is B shift. Well, A shift won't mind if we went and took some of their walls, that type of deal. They get excited and stuff. But in regards of timeline, that's up to you. When we had it, the one structure that we had on Cibolo Valley Drive, they gave us that we only had a month with it, I believe. And so the staff was out there every day. We scheduled around it, that we had objectives, and this is what we're gonna do. So the timeline, it's up to y'all.
Okay.
You know.
I say it would be indefinite until further rescinded.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
Oh, and then ventilation, the top of the ventilation.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was gonna be my
Of
next
course,
thing.
I asked a question, yeah.
That
But I
was
would,
gonna be my next thing. Would it be okay if we cut holes in the roof?
I say so, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. The only thing I would suggest is anything where you could physically gain access from the exterior walls, the
Okay.
brick, and, don't knock down the side of the wall, where it would be difficult to patch back up. I think the roof, I don't think anybody's gonna try to climb up there. And if they do, God bless them, right? But, you have a question, Kendall?
Yes.
Please, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just my question was, I think it was answered, but I'm not really sure. What's the frequency that you think would be beneficial to your teams?
Typically, they train every tour. They work for $48.96. So, and it varies that either they may do it on their first 24 or their second 24. But it's like I said, it's dependent on how often would y'all mind us going out there. You know, we know that there is a gate that's up there, so we may need to get a key, or maybe use a universal parks key that we have, that we can add a lock to it, so y'all don't have to give us one of y'all's keys. We have our own access to get to it.
Right.
You can say, hey, we only want you there once a month. And that's fine.
No, I'm definitely
You know,
in support.
it's-
I'm just curious. And so this would be like if, there was something with the doors or the windows, this would be like, if it, gets crushed in, we fix it, then we do it all over again. We fix it, then we do it all over again, kind of like that.
Yeah, if the exterior, we won't touch the exterior. The front door, obviously, if we breach it, take it off the hinges, then we'll try to do what we can do, maybe get some plywood to secure it after we leave, because obviously we don't want
That's all I ask.
people going in.
Where do you do your training now? Like I'm still learning. You don't have like a
So yes,
dedicated.
we use pallets right now, and we make little corridors, and we do it in the parking lot, and we do it in the bays at our fire station.
So there's not like a dedicated place where you have like structures and stuff.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But I'll go ahead.
Next budget cycle, right?
Did I speak too soon about?
No. You opened up a gateway for me. So currently, right now, I'm going through the architect and design for fire station number 4,
Okay.
which will be located down there at Interstate 10.
Yeah.
And part of that project is actually putting a burn facility out there,
Oh, nice.
where we can actually do training for the fire department and the police department. So that's another thing. The police department could actually use this as well for their SWAT and hostage stuff, and they can smoke it up, and they can do their simulations and try to clear a house and stuff like that as well.
My first student worker job in college, I worked at LSU fire training. And I remember just being amazed in all different fire departments, not just LSU, the university, but from different parishes would come around to do the fire training. And of course, I didn't know anything, but I just remember, obviously it's a huge facility and just dedicated. So that's why I was asking if you had that. And my son-in-law is fire and EMS in Miami, so
Nice.
it's near and dear to my heart.
Well, good.
I think
So
you get it.
when we are required to do live fire training once a year, and we are part of Guadalupe County Firefighters Association. They do have a burn building. It's probably 1,100 square foot. It's over 30 years old, and I can guarantee you that my staff could go out there blindfolded, and they already built that muscle memory. We've already outgrown that facility,
Right.
and as we were going moving forward and about fire station number 4, the land that we had, we looked at it, could it be possible if the funds were there to build something?
Right.
So more modern, multi-story, because we do have ladder trucks, so we can, practice that as well. Besides that burn building that we do training now, it's in Guadalupe County by the Guadalupe River, so it is a decent drive for us to drive out there. The next closest one is the city of San Antonio, and that's on 151 on the south side of town, so that's also a long drive for us to go out there. San Antonio College has a burn facility as well, and that's even further away. Randolph Air Force Base does have one there, but
Fort St. Houston, I think, does.
Fort
too.
Sam does,
Yeah,
but
they
it
do.
does take a lot of
Coordination.
a lot of red tape, a lot of paperwork to fill out, and stuff like that as well. And one thing in regards for liability, we did, through our city attorney's office, we did do a hold harmless agreement with the contractor when we did the house on Cibolo Valley Drive.
Oh, okay.
Because it wasn't our property, and we were going out there and training, so if that's something that the board would want, we can reach out as well.
I
but-
think, actually, the city insures that property, so.
Okay, then we're even better.
Yeah.
But still,
But go ahead, Kelsey, give us the.
Yes, what I was just going to ask, if we do get to the point of making a motion on this,
Do we
though.
need a motion,
I
or-
would like to have one.
Okay.
Just for the record, but what I was going to suggest, if we can draft up a very simple just agreement, and that captures basically just the conditions that you outlined tonight.
Okay.
And then as far as a motion, if the board would just make a motion to approve the board president to sign that agreement when it comes forward.
Okay, okay.
Uh,
So,
I gotta add something. So I'm in favor of you guys having training facilities, and I'm in favor if you guys are, because I'm not familiar with the property, because there was talk that we wanted to keep the property, to a certain extent as far as the buildings on the property. My opinion, just as a resident, I'd want to keep the side walls and as much of the exterior as presentable as possible so that, we don't just have a huge boarded up house in our city, right? So, making sure that we keep it as presentable as possible. So the exterior breaches would be my concern as a citizen. I don't know personally if it would solve the break-in issues. It might deter some of it, but I don't think it would deter all of it, depending on if you're out there every 3 days, every 2 days, or once a month. So more frequently, of course, it would deter the break-ins, but if you're not there that often, we may still have the issue of break-ins. So when it comes to the use of the facility, personally, I'm 100% for it. I just don't know if it's going to solve the break-in issue.
Sure. But I think it's another tactic, counter that we can possibly, but at the end of the day, I think the main purpose here is for them to have a training facility.
And I'm 100% for that.
Yeah.
So we actually had a developer give us.
But hopefully it works.
Three structures right outside our city limits, and we were all excited, right? And we were going to work with the Marion Volunteer Fire Department, a joint venture, because we do a lot of stuff on the east side together. And we went out there to look at those structures, myself and Batanchi Milton, and unfortunately, the hoarders and everybody, they did all the work for it. They tore we didn't even use it because they tore every bit of sheetrock. They did every window. They pulled ceiling. They did everything. And it was like, we looked at it like, well, we can't do anything with it.
It's all done, yeah.
For us to have an opportunity, and yes, we will leave the exterior, and there again, one thing that aesthetically, if we do cut holes in the roof, then we're going to put a piece of plywood on there. So,
Sure.
if that's okay, then we'll like to proceed with that, and we'll
Yeah,
just focus on the
Of
interior.
course. Just to let you know, Derek, we're not keeping those houses.
Okay.
Like, literally, those houses will be gone if we're gonna go down to another line item, but one way or another, those houses are gonna be gone. The only thing we're keeping is that old historic building.
Okay.
But the two residential buildings, you're right, we don't want, hopefully the city doesn't give us any violations or like code, like, hey, fix your roof. I'm like, wait, hold on, man, we just let the fire chief burn a hole in it, right? So,
You can't see, it's not like the house is right on the street.
yeah.
Okay.
But
It's a ways away from.
do you know where Nimitz Park is?
Yes.
Okay, so I would go out there when you get a chance, maybe take, I'm
Absolutely.
sure you got little ones, but take them out to Nimitz Park and I would say at least it's quarter,
Okay.
maybe about 1,000 miles, or 1,000 yards off, not miles, but 1,000 yards off of the main street, so it's pretty set back.
You've probably driven past it a million times and don't notice there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I
So-
was gonna say,
Covered by
those houses
trees.
have been boarded up for the last
Okay,
few months
good.
completely already. You
Good.
can't really see them,
Yeah.
where they're located.
So,
So you'd be good with raising them or controlled burn at some point? and get-
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, you can do that on day
Okay.
one if you like, yeah, and flood it out. Just
Enjoy.
all we ask is want to make sure the conditions is, please do not pop any holes in the exterior of the walls and the brick. And if you may, do force entry through the front doors or windows, we just ask you to board it back up with 4-inch deck screws or something to that effect and go into the 2x4s. And if you want to pop holes in the roof, that's fine, just throw a 2x4, or piece of plywood down on it and,
Okay.
and that's about it.
Go to town.
And-
Other than that, there's no restrictions on access.
Go whenever you want.
No restriction on what type of training you want to do.
Okay.
So, you can flood it, you can actually demolish it if you like. Take it down.
Actually,
Yeah.
But there won't be
yeah.
any kind of like chemical training or anything,
No,
right?
no,
So-
no. If we're flowing, it's flowing water.
Yeah. Also, too, is there a fire hydrant out there for you to do the training?
We'll bring water in.
Oh, you bring water
Yeah,
in?
all of our trucks have water, and it's
Oh,
amazing
okay,
how much.
just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah, and that goes back to apparatus placement and the training that we can do called booster backup. As we line trucks up, we can, because that's something that we would do out here,
Okay.
that we would do out there. Because, that property is unique because there's not any hydrants actually on property, but there is hydrants on 78. But that gives us an opportunity to practice for properties out down south. that do
sure,
not
like
have
an
hydrants.
ETJ, for
Yeah.
instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Where you'll
I-
be in that situation.
Yeah, I do have one question. Do we need to notify somebody each time we go out there?
No.
Or just go out there?
No, no. not at all.
So we have to make a motion for this?
Oh, we do need to make a motion.
Wait, she's not done with
I
us.
know, yes.
Okay.
So as Kelsey mentioned, yes, the motion would be to engage in an agreement letter that would specify the details that have been given at this meeting, that would be agreed upon with the fire department and then signed by your president. So that would be what the motion is for. And just for clarity's sake, I do want to make sure the Red Ball Cafe would not be a part of any of this, but the 2 residential structures and the detached garage would be, correct?
Yes.
That's
And the-
correct, that's
Okay,
correct. All
just making
structures
sure.
besides the Red Ball Cafe.
And the Red Ball Cafe is, if I
Far
remember,
away
it's
enough
far
so you
enough
won't-
away so their trucks wouldn't, okay, that's what I thought.
Or if you
Okay,
do
so
any
it's-
big blaze, just make sure, you know what I mean, just.
So yes, that would be the motion that I would look for. But I do also want to say, you don't have to make a motion. We're bringing you all your options. It's just.
No, do a motion, please. I would like to have a motion, please.
I make a motion to extend the use of the residential properties and the garage with the stipulations of no exterior penetrations on the walls, as we discussed,
So
And
the
have to an
motion would be
agreement,
to
yes.
enter
Oh,
into.
to enter an
yeah,
agreement.
an
With the fire
agreement,
department.
yes.
with the fire department,
And allow Mr. Mattingly to sign that.
and allow Mr. Maddenley to sign it.
Okay, is that good for the motion? Perfect? Okay,
Yes.
can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Do you want me to do a roll call? Okay, motion carries. Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Not at this
I'm gonna give you direction, we're not gonna do fence. Yes. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Chief, I appreciate it, you guys have fun.
Thank you, gentlemen.
If you guys do anything huge, let us know, I would like to come watch,
Yeah, that's a
No.
good idea.
all right?
Yes, let them know. Come out.
I have a question about
Thank you.
I'll catch them another time.
You sure? Okay,
Whatever. No, I'll talk to you later.
okay, okay. All right, perfect, moving on, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay,
Knock
moving on
yourselves
to 8C, presentation, discussion, and appropriate action to submit a request for proposals for legal services for the Cibolo Economic Development Corporation. Alora, now, please do not read the entire RFP. I think honestly, and just for the sake of time,
Sir, I feel like since I had to go through all of it and edit, then y'all probably want to enjoy this document as much as I have. Just kidding. I will not be reading the
okay,
RFP.
you just, you need a motion to approve to issue the RFP, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
And to provide a background, slightly, the
Okay.
EDC entered into contract with our current attorney 3 years ago. The contract was for 3 years. It's up. In order to make sure that we're just doing the fiscally responsible thing and getting the most quality work, then we would be soliciting bids for proposals for another EDC attorney. If you approve tonight, what you're approving tonight is for staff to finish finding the appropriate dates, finish the RFP, basically what you're approving tonight is you're comfortable with the scope of services and you're comfortable with staff proceeding with putting together a subcommittee of you who would act to interview any candidates and make a selection moving forward and for staff to issue the RFP. Do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer.
one question, when does our current agreement expire?
It is already been 3 years, so we have the ability with notice to let our existing attorney know.
Also,
Once.
just continues until we tell them to end it? Okay.
Yes, so what it had was it locked in the rates for a 3-year term. Where
Okay.
past that term, they're still honoring that 3-year rate that they provided for us, but now we're basically just on a month by month until we give them notice. And we will, of course, extend the offer to the current firm if they want to reapply for this. But it is, as Ms. Wackles says, just going out per our standard practice.
That makes sense, okay.
I was
Okay.
gonna say, is there room on there for an extension in case the RFP process gets rejected?
Danger of losing our legal representation while we're going through this.
Do we have any questions?
Do we have any obligation, once the RFP is completed, to select a vendor? Hypothetically, all the quotes come back more than what we're currently paying. Do we have the option to stay with our current representation at the rate that we're getting?
As Ms. Lee said, we would extend the opportunity to apply to our current attorney, and so they would be able to apply at that time. But again, as she stated, they are keeping their current rate as is, but the 3-year term that locked that rate in has expired, so that doesn't mean that they necessarily would continue. So, either way, I think it would
I was gonna say,
benefit.
are we paying more?
No, not yet. Correct.
But to answer your question, though, there's language in the RFP where the city can cancel or, you know, not award if we choose not to. However, we'll be in a situation where we're on pretty much a month-to-month basis.
Yes,
And we'd
correct.
have to resolicit pretty much if we didn't want to. Typically, that's not sort of the best practice. Probably the best practice would be would be to engage with whoever submits bids or quotations or proposals and actually negotiate with them and do best and final, so.
The average RFP length as far as when we'd expect to hear back?
So we originally had dates put in here. They have been taken out of this because with the holidays, we want to be conscious of that and not issue it and then have this long span of holidays where maybe we don't get as many responses. So that's part of what staff would determine. There are certain requirements through our procurement process of dates and times that we would need to allow, but, and we would stick to those requirements. But as far as when it would be issued, it would really be more about, you know, strategically, what would be the best option.
Thank you.
I would say you could probably issue it, but just make sure it goes beyond the New Year's. Like, you don't have to close it as soon.
Yes, right, yes.
Issue it, throw it out, get it out there, right, in the next few weeks, but then don't close it for maybe 90 days.
Well, actually, one of the things we need to do is re-edit it, so if you wanted to volunteer to re-edit the RFP. Oh, okay.
Well, how long is there a prescriptive time frame for how long a solicitation is out? I mean,
There is, yes.
Okay.
Our procurement department handles all of our RFPs, including the one for.
yeah, I was
legal
just
services.
wondering, you said if we could go beyond, just want to make sure that we are consistent
Yeah,
with
usually
what we've
it's a
done
minimum
with other-
requirement, so as long as we met that, it would be fine, yes.
There's a minimum, but not a maximum. And typically, it's what's reasonable,
Right.
right? For instance, we wouldn't want to put it out there for a day.
No.
The expectation is you're probably not going to get good responses, right? So, but I think putting it out there, obviously putting it out there sooner than later, and then extending it out for 60 to 90 days is not a problem. We don't violate any Texas procurement laws, and I think that would be fine. And then we'll do it, I don't think we'll do a subcommittee now, but we'll put it on the agenda in the future, and we'll set up a subcommittee, but we don't want to digress too far off.
Yes, without getting too much in,
Yeah,
or
but, yeah.
tying ourselves to anything specifically, what would likely happen would be at the January board meeting, we would come back and ask you to establish that subcommittee.
Yes.
And then have those interviews going on with an anticipation of probably February, having the board take a vote on that.
Perfect.
And that still works with our current board, or lawyer timeline. Again, we're not at danger of losing any representation during that time.
So, having said that, can I get a motion?
Tell us again what the motion needs to say.
You just say it verbatim. I would literally say approve,
Motion.
staff to submit a request for proposal for legal services. I would
Just that's good. 'Cause
Yes,
it said
that
something
is-
about dates
yes.
and other
Yes.
things. I was like, ugh. All right, I will then make a motion. Oh, any questions?
No, go ahead. Motion.
A motion to
Let's do a motion.
approve the action to submit a request for proposals for legal services for the Cibolo EDC. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll second
I got a
that.
motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, perfect. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess you might as well stay up there. You're next. Presentation, discussion, and/or action on incentive policy for the Cibolo EDC intended to better define, standardize, professionalize the incentive process in Cibolo.
Yes, so this is coming before you. I do want to point out there is no action being requested
Okay.
this evening. This is being presented to you for discussion purposes. We will be extending the same opportunity to the city council in December at their meeting then. And then we will adjust it based on any feedback we get from both parties, and we would bring it back for action in the new year. And as typical, it would go to EDC first for action and then to City Council. The purpose behind having the incentive policy, and this has been broken into two documents. So there is the incentive policy, which is before you and which is what we seek direction on. There is also a procedures and application document. That was included for information, for courtesy, but the procedures and application process, that's a staff document. That's the information that we solicit from anyone interested in pursuing incentives. That's data that we use to come up with cost-benefit analyses for our incentive negotiations, and also to vet the companies that come in. So the procedures are just standard. They give applicants an opportunity to, if they get denied, what's their next recourse, that kind of thing. But really what is most interest, I think, to the EDC is the policy itself. Again, being a policy, it is not a legal document. This is really about guiding what it is that our programs, our incentive programs offer and how they are calculated. Now, I want to be clear, as you all know, because in Texas we are able to use Chapter 380 agreements through the Texas Government Code. Chapter 380 allows for a lot of flexibility for cities to incentivize projects. One of the biggest benefits, in fact, for doing business in Texas is the freedom of Chapter 380 agreements. Chapter 380 agreements, for that reason, are on a case-by-case basis with a qualification that you can only enter into an agreement if the project would not occur but for the financial incentive. So it cannot be a gift, it cannot be an award, it cannot be some sort of carrot, right? It really needs to be a project that otherwise would not occur without the incentive. That is the project that you are able to enter into a 380 agreement through the state law with an individual party. We do have other tools at our disposal, tools that the city of Cibolo has used previously, things like tax abatements. Those go through the county. We have other tools that can look like our business improvement grant, and that do look like a flat grant. We do have the opportunity in the future to pursue additional incentivization programs. Those can look like revolving loan fund programs. Those can look like, again, the EDC has a jobs grant that you often could formalize that if you wanted. There are a lot of other options and tools available. This policy is meant to generally provide the groundwork for any and all of those. So you're going to notice in the policy that it has a section specific to tax abatements, and that it's got some qualifiers in it. That's an important piece, not because we only enter into tax abatements, but because we also enter into tax rebates through the Chapter 380 agreement, okay? So we say, then the difference is, if you say, oh, my property taxes are going to be $100 this year, and we say, well, we will give you an abatement for 10 years of 100% for your property taxes. That means for 10 years, you would get assessed 0 on your taxes, right? That goes through the county. They assess your taxes. They would come and say, you have 0, or whatever percentage, right? This is just for
hypothetical.
Hypothetical. The difference is with a rebate, the county would say, you owe $100, you would pay $100, you would turn around and show proof of payment and proof of what you were assessed to the city, and the city would say, we're going to cut you a check for the $100, okay? And you're thinking, okay, well, what's the difference? The difference is taking out that third party that can sometimes make things more complicated. Obviously, the county is going to have different requirements, different things that they need in order to make sure that they know who gets assessed what. So a lot of times we find that rebates are just a faster, simpler, more straightforward option. It gets to the same end, right? But for the purposes of talking about tax abatements, we have changed it to tax abatement and rebates, right? And again, these are general guidelines. And if you look through the policy, it says, and every chance you can get, it says, but this is not a guarantee. We make no guarantees. Every project is a case-by-case basis. We will always maintain that it is by a case-by-case basis. You could or could not meet these thresholds and requirements, and we may still consider you. And that is because we want to make sure that the EDC and the council have that flexibility still built in, while also, thank you for that, highlighting case-by-case basis.
No, we understand. I mean, we have the discretion if you meet the qualifications or not to approve something.
Of course.
Yeah.
But we also do want to provide, because a lot of times we get, projects that maybe would not necessarily be eligible for incentives. And they would come to us and say, hey, can I get some money, sort of thing. And you don't really have currently a policy in place that can help to guide and direct them, that can help educate what are incentives used for, how are they used, and really also are you an eligible project? Could you be considered an eligible project. It's not to say that you have to meet these requirements to be eligible, but generally, what do we think is reasonable? So a lot of these valuations that you'll see here, a lot of these percentages that you'll see, they are based on just sort of standard, either standard policy that we have entered into here in Cibolo and previous incentives, but also standard across other cities in the area. So a lot of these are standardized for other incentive policies in the region. So it's fairly typical that we also do talk about the other types of incentives that are offered, the Chapter 380 agreements, but again, we leave it nice and vague. We leave in there opportunities for, if you have a fee-based incentive, again, kind of an explanation to explain. We have a lot of tools we want to talk to you about, and if you need that for your project, but here's sort of the basis to get started on. We also do, and I like this part, we have section 4G of the policy, are guaranteed incentives. And I love this. I love adding these into policies because it's basically saying that we are a business-friendly community, that we are pro-business, and we do have existing incentives for projects that come in that you don't have to apply for. You may have to request. You could request them, for instance, the expedited building plan reviews, right? Maybe you could tell, hey, your project, I'm just on a really tight timeline, and we as the city already work with those businesses. We already work with those projects very closely to make sure that we are meeting some of these needs. You'll see that you have on number 4 there an 80% building permit fee rate for commercial projects that fall under certain categories, manufacturing, warehouses, and distribution centers. That's something new that has been adopted in this fiscal year, and the reason for that is that if you're under that category, no matter what your project is, you're only going to be paying building permit fees at 80% of the traditional rate here in Cibolo. And the reason for that is to stay competitive with the market, but it's also to incentivize those types of developments here in the city. So I like that section. We have that there. And then we have here again some of the procedural stuff about being what the process is if you'd like to apply, what reconsideration looks like, who would not be eligible for an incentive, and then we have some standard definitions just to clarify. So I am looking for any discussion on this item. I also do have one sort of specific question that I would like to kind of get some feedback on. We have currently in this policy a capital improvement value base requirement of $5 million. So your project needs to be $5 million or above in capital investment dollars to be considered for incentive. Again, it's my case basis, but because it's set out in here, just like all of these numbers, it's really to help guide people so that we just don't, we don't have everybody see. That $5 million is at the discretion of EDC and the council. So I will say that we have fluctuated on what that number should be. In most cities in our area and that I've worked for, that valuation is $1 million. And that's very low, but it depends on what it is that you may incentivize in the future. Okay? In Cibolo, if the incentives are really only going to be considered for larger projects of an industrial type scale or something like that, then you may want to move that dollar amount up. But if you find that you might, as a board, incentivize a project that would not meet that threshold, I encourage you to consider moving that number lower. Or if you feel $5 million is really just not enough for us to be offering incentives and going through all of the staff time and effort to incentivize, then maybe you want to up that number. Now, I did look at what projects in Cibolo since COVID fell in that range of $1 million to $5 million. So some of those would be things that you may not wish to incentivize, like Chick-fil-A was just over $1 million, like Willie's Ice House, Magnolia, Pancake House, right? These are all projects that are just over $1 million. They wouldn't meet our threshold. So if they had come and said, hey, we need assistance, you might say, oh, we wouldn't incentivize them anyway, maybe because of the type of business they are, right? Retail and restaurant. But some of those businesses also included, for instance, Firestone. industrial shell buildings in the downtown Jorgensen, development. When you're talking about a shell building, there's not a lot in there. So those fell in about the $3-4 million range, right? So you could say, well, we wouldn't maybe individually incentivize one building. We would do it as a group if they were gonna build 2 or 3 buildings. But then if you think, well, maybe we would though, if there was an opportunity to incentivize one building, if that's what they came for, and if that's what they were needing assistance with, and that's what there was room for, whatever reason, maybe we would. So therefore, they wouldn't meet the 5 million, so do we wanna lower that? And there are pros and cons to upping that amount, to lowering that amount. Pros and cons, right? Yes, the lower you make that amount, potentially the more projects will seek incentivization. They might see it and say, oh, hey, we do qualify, as opposed to, oh, 5 million, okay, I'm not gonna bother. There's a possibility of it. But then there's also the possibility that you will be maybe deterring projects that you may want that do fall under that amount. So there is no right or wrong to it. It's just really a matter of preference. And so I ask you the same as I will ask council. It's just considering your preferences, what maybe you think that number should be.
So, I mean, it's more preference, with more policy, where if we want to incentivize types of industries that we want to come here. Now, again, it's not guaranteeing, obviously, as we learned at the tax workshop, you know, we gotta learn how to say no,
Yeah.
right, in some senses, you know what I mean? So, my only thing is, I mean, again, you're just looking for just direction, right? You're not looking for anything, or just discussion, you get feedback. The only feedback I had was, one, I'd say we can keep it at the 5 million.
Yeah, I definitely don't wanna go down to 1.
Yeah, you guys just wanna,
I actually don't agree with that at all.
go ahead, what's your thought on it?
And just my thought.
Yeah.
And one, because I feel like I need time to digest
Yeah.
this and think about it,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't want to just say 5 million and I haven't given it the proper thought and maybe discounting a group of businesses or a type of businesses. And this is only because I'm not educated yet enough on it. If you all had established a goal of the type of businesses or what you're going after, is I think in order to set a threshold or a range that we maybe, not on paper, but we kind of know what a range is.
Sure.
You kind of have to know what your goal is. Like, what are you trying to incentivize? And the type of business that you're trying to flow in. So I'm not saying no, like I don't think it's a good idea. I'm saying no because I'd like to sort of give it a little bit of thought, because I think one of the things that I heard at the meeting before, at the big meeting, was a lot of talk about diversifying, like a lot of, and driving business. And like, if we say, okay, for example, it's 5 million, right? Not that that's a wrong number, but
Right.
just 5 million. And then you gave an example that Chick-fil-A was like 1 million, right? If that would have meant that Chick-fil-A said no, because we were at 5 million, then that's a potential local employer that we would have lost out on, because we set a threshold that, kind of put us at a little bit of a disadvantage. So I'm just thinking along those terms to try to understand what actually are the goals that were set, or what you guys were thinking, just because I don't know.
Of course, and I think with this, and Ms. Wackles pointed out at the beginning, it's kind of has dual things in that this incentive policy is for both the EDC and the city council side of it. But when you talk about the different goals, all except the Jorgensen properties that Ms. Wackles represented were not ones that the EDC could have incentivized anyway.
Okay.
So per the sales tax funds, it has to be primary jobs, and there's training we can do, can make you both acquainted with that. But the EDC cannot give funds for Chick-fil-A, for Willie's, for retail or restaurants. And so those wouldn't have been eligible items for the EDC. However, the city could have recorded it. So, and if you still think it should be lower after your evaluation because you think it would be good for the city to do it, that's definitely something that can be proposed. But lowering it would not have allowed the EDC to incentivize those.
So like, for instance, I would say most of these incentives are not even relevant to the EDC. The only one that the only tool in this policy is the 380 agreement with a caveat to it, where it has to be tied to job creation
Right.
and things of that nature. It's sort of like we have a 380 agreement with Santikos, for instance. So even you're guaranteed, which is good, business, positive, but none of these decisions under 1 through 7 would ever come to us. We could never waive a building permit fee, for instance, or the impact fees. We could never do that. That's city policies, that's city's decisions. The only thing we could do is enter into a performance agreement through the 380 and incentivize them, depending on what type of industry it's doing.
So if I'm interested, what's your thought around the 5 million? Like, what's your line of thinking about it?
I want to see more, a different sort of job creation, like, and our former president, he said it really well. So if we bring in restaurants, that's great, and that's giving us something, but really, I think as the EDC at this point, what I want for Cibolo is manufacturers, industrial, light industrial.
Okay.
I want those businesses that are gonna come here and create serious jobs and give us money. And so, like, I get that there are gonna be smaller businesses, but I think there are other things. But for me, like, I really focus, like, right now on the I-10 corridor, because apparently that's what we have to focus on those kind of places.
Right.
So as the EDC, that's what I wanna see come in. Not necessarily, not that I don't wanna see more restaurants come in, but I think what I want to see for Cibolo is really major jobs that are gonna
Right.
come in, not a business that's going to necessarily, that will probably hire high school
Lower
students.
paying, right.
Right, lower paying jobs. I wanna see jobs that are gonna actually pay money, come into Cibolo and bring the, that we
So-
can bring those major jobs into Cibolo. So that's where I stand.
I just want to give you a little example, a personal example. My company I work for right now is looking at moving right now. We're looking for moving from 2 buildings right now that we rent in Schertz to a $2.5 million home of about 2,500 or 25,000 square feet. We wouldn't come anywhere near any of those incentives, but we also do millions of dollars upon dollars, and we have we don't have a regular overturn of employees. So
Right.
we keep the same employees, we stay in business. So that's where I'm kind of like,
So that's a great point, and I will say
just
that
give
in
you a little
practice-
heads up, like personal wise, that's what.
Yeah, so again, in practice, that is also what I've seen. So for instance, in most of the larger manufacturing industrial type projects that the EDC would and could incentivize are already far exceeding.
Yeah.
Right, of course.
Right? But you do have some that don't meet that threshold for different reasons, but are still those kinds of quality jobs that you want. And so an example is when I worked in another city, we had a forensic engineering company that wanted to bring their executive staff,
Right.
their headquarters, to the community. They were taking over an existing building, so they weren't adding that much capital improvement, but they were bringing 30 of their top, way
CEO,
richer than me.
yeah.
They were adding in quite a bit of marketing for the city. They were adding in when they would have events, they would fly people in for meetings. I mean, there was a lot to it. And they were just over $1 million. And we were able to incentivize them. And so I think that is why you will typically see cities set that threshold at $1 million. Some cities do incentivize retail at the city level, not the EDC level. And so if that's something that they would consider for those, specialty, whatever, then it allows that to be open. But to your point, Mr. Hicks, that's correct, is that there are also certain companies that do fit those profile of jobs, both in industry and in quality, but that still don't meet that threshold because maybe they don't build their own buildings.
Right.
You're just bringing in their tangible property.
And can you walk through how you incorporated the option for jobs then if they don't meet the capital investment? Because in that, we have a job of 25 jobs, correct? So if they can meet that as an alternate to the capital investment?
Yeah, so that's also in the policy, is that you can also, under the abatements section, there's also if you increase the local employment, that maybe you would have an additional abatement percentage on top of that. That if your wages are of a certain caliber, that there's the opportunity for additional incentive there. That way, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it really does provide sort of a sampling of depending on what it is that they bring to the table.
So,
And so this discussion, you're gonna try and take this back to city council and give our, I guess, discussion pretty much to them, yeah?
Yeah, and they'll be able to weigh it as well.
I mean, that
Yeah.
5 million is the basis for city council to
Yeah.
make that decisions too, right? The 5 million is not necessarily, I mean, that's.
We're not
necessarily
gonna
just
see that,
EDC.
but we can say, hey, city council, you know, can y'all fix that? or
Lower
whatever?
it, or
Yeah,
as a
okay.
suggestion.
Yeah, okay, cool, yeah.
so
Or increase it. I mean, again, it's really.
I have one opinion and one question.
Sure.
So when looking at the 5 million versus what it could be and so forth, if we lower it to 1 million, you know, the only thing we're going to get possibly is more applications, right? I mean, there's a potential for more applications, and we have the choice on each case by case to decline them. So lowering it, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily do anything negative towards the city other than possibly provide more work for other people, which I understand that could be a negative if it could be. And more people coming to us for possibilities, you know. If we were to, and this isn't one of my questions, but if we were to say lower to 1 million, is there, you know, if you do this, you're guaranteed this rate, or do we have flexibility on what we extend to each case by case?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Nothing is guaranteed.
So that's good to know, you know. So for me personally, I'd be open to lowering it just because it opens the door to some of those professional office type services and so forth, as well as even, you know, some of the service contractors as electricians and HVAC and things like that that could drive good paying jobs to the area. The question I had was, you mentioned in the presentation that there's an 80% fee discount on warehousing. And during our last meeting that we had, which was joint with City Council, our, you know, third-party contractor specifically was telling us, don't bring warehousing in because the jobs don't come with it. So my question is that a good idea to continue that type of fee discount for a business that we may not be interested in having in the city?
That's a great question. That fee discount is actually a rate that is imposed through our building permitting to keep up with general market.
Mm-hmm.
That was not an initiative specifically by the EDC or the ED department or anything of that nature. That is something that has already been approved in the fee schedule and is now a part of what is offered.
Okay.
But I guess what we want to do when you present this to the city council, where they were there too with our third-party contractors, maybe look at that policy and maybe consider removing that. Even though we understand it's not guaranteed, but do we really want to incentivize distribution centers to come in, right? Even though it, you know, gosh, what was his name from RKW? Kyle. Yeah, Kyle. So, yeah, I mean, we can even suggest, again, it's not really our decision, we could even suggest lowering it down to 1 million. And I'm fine with that. Again, there's no guarantees, and so we can provide more work for you all, right?
When are you planning to discuss this with the
This will
city?
go to council at their December meeting.
The second Tuesday
They
of
only have one
December.
in December, so it's December.
Second Tuesday.
So it's right after that.
Sure.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks.
We
Yeah,
won't
yeah.
be meeting
I mean,
No, we
I-
won't, we won't.
I don't know
So
about
it's
the 1
right
million.
after this
I mean,
one.
Depending on the feedback, how much, you know, if we need
There's no
changes
guarantee.
to happen, then it would hopefully come before the EDC for action in January.
Okay, well, then I have just two more questions then. How do the potential applicants, I guess, how do they find out about the incentive program?
So we discussed the incentive program on our website, but since we haven't had a formal policy or application until now, it's just kind of like, we offer it, okay, come talk to us. And so we would be able to provide this policy, a link to this policy, to the document where they could download the application, see the procedures, have all of our contact information. That would be available online. Also though, so I respond to RFPs, or RFIs, I'm sorry, from a number of different sources in the area on projects that are interested. And usually those projects will say, please include information about your incentives. So I have sort of a standard write-up that I provide that says, again, basically a summarized version of the general information, including the policy. We're open to just talking about incentives, finalize and formalize the process to make it easier and all around.
And it's
It's also easier to
discretionary.
disseminate the information as well, rather than you regurgitating it on every email and archive.
Yeah.
It's something that you can actually post,
It's-
and which makes sense.
It's standardized, send it.
Yeah.
discretionary,
So,
right? Like,
I mean, you can give those suggestions that we talked about, and then I think that's perfectly fine. And other than that, I know at the tax workshop, they said no, the gentleman from the Texas, Economic Development said no more rebates, but I'll leave that well, he said that language. I'll let you guys figure that out. Okay, well, that wouldn't be us anyways. I just wanted to let you know. Yeah, sneak anything that could get the city of Cibolo, not the EDC, in trouble.
So, I have a curiosity question. There's a section up there about the wages being 15% higher than, the county and so forth. I didn't read all the details there. Is that just across the entire wage scale for my own reference, or, I've seen people, put the top 10% top heavy and then, minimum wage for everyone else, but they meet it as an average. So do we take that into consideration, or is it just straight average cost?
So the good thing about this, as I've seen it in practice, is it's really up to how you want to use it. You'll find that if a company knows that they're bringing executive level employees, and they know they're going to surpass that amount, they're going to let you know in their application. And this provides you the opportunity to consider that as part of the overall determination. And then you can, I have seen it before, where you request for a statement by HR signed annually before they get whatever incentive that says, we certify that this percentage, majority of our workforce is over this standard. And so at least you have that if you wanted to go back and vet that. But for the most part, I think that it's flexible. It's how you want to define it.
Okay, so nothing's cut in stone right now, so.
So it
I
can
think
be
it's
rolled
written
back.
ambiguous for our
Okay.
interpretation.
Good.
So when we
Good.
actually go into a 380 agreement, clearly, we can set the terms on a performance agreement however we see fit,
Good.
right? And so again, I think this is just more of formalizing, as they said, we don't have anything like this right now. So they're developing a policy that can be easily communicated, and also to sort of screen out people who don't really have a capital asset that they're gonna provide, or they're gonna provide any type of, job creation, right? So, and standardize the process a little bit. However, the process is subject to change based on
Yeah,
our
that's what I-
decisions.
That's what I was.
Like, so instance, whatever it says here is perfectly fine. We can not necessarily contradict it, but we can deviate from it, right? And
Well,
that's
the one
okay,
good
on
thing
a
with-
case-by-case basis.
The
So,
one positive thing, or could be positive thing about lowering the threshold, because we have the oversight to make changes, right? If we see that there needs to be changes, right? But I'm thinking, like, if you lower the threshold, perhaps it will drive more applicants. And then you have some data to work with to see, by lowering the threshold, what type of businesses now are sort of flooding
Or
the
interested,
channel.
yeah, of
And then we can make, the more data you have, you can make some different decisions if you need to. If we see that, okay, at this 1 million threshold over whatever time period, you set, then you're getting businesses that don't really meet or
Create
help
the
us
jobs we
create
need,
those
yeah.
jobs or
And
those
the
goals
pay.
that we're trying to do. And because it's not locked in stone, there is room for us to make changes. But by getting a larger number of applicants, we can have good data to see what's driving that. So I think that at least could give us, that to see, all right, so who's being incentivized
Right.
at this level, and then who's being incentivized at another level. So, instead of just
And I'm sorry, not to drag it out, but I do also want to call attention, so whether we send it 5 million, 1 million,
3 million.
whatever it is, that can be adjusted.
Right.
So one of the things that I also really like about having an incentive policy is going to be under section 10. And that is that in the creation and adoption of this policy, it is going to now require that the city staff in the EDC department pull together
Annual evaluation.
an annual report that shows the status of all
Sure,
And once we
absolutely.
have a good baseline over a certain period, it allows us to then benchmark this program to know, what makes sense for Cibolo, where we're trying to go. So I agree with having it memorialized in a professional way. And
And also too, we can adjust it based on our strategic plan that's gonna come out in
Right.
about a year, right? Which will be
Right.
about the same time. So, great work. We like the product. Maybe suggest some of those changes or please suggest some of those changes that we've asked, and that's really it. No motion needed. Any other further questions?
thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Laura. To you again. Okay, section E, discussion, direction, and/or action regarding a potential land exchange between the city of Cibolo and the Cibolo EDC. So do you mind, okay, I mean, you don't have to go through the entire, but give us a background. Obviously, we have some
Oh, yes.
new members. And then talk about the two items that you want, and then if you guys want some background, there's obviously, you can read up on it.
Okay, so basically, the letter of intent was approved by the council on October 10th. The letter of intent says that the council would like to proceed with discussions with the EDC about a potential land swap of certain parcels of property between Nimitz Park and the 16 acres that we talked about a number of times tonight. This is the park.
Could you do me a favor and actually put out the diagram so everybody can look at it on the big screen? The concept plan? Yes, please.
Just over here, so then we have all the.
So, based on approval of the LOI, letter of intent, which is a non-legally binding document that just simply says we would like to pursue, discussions about this potential. The staff was directed, to reach out and obtain a title commitment report for Nimitz Park. The reason being is because Nimitz Park was sold to the city in the early seventies. There is not a great deal of data and records for, that land purchase from that time. So we had a deed, but not a whole lot else. And there had been at one point, and Kelsey can clarify on the details of this, but there at one point had been perhaps some exchange of funds of some sort for, Nimitz Park regarding Texas Parks and Wildlife, something to do with the potential that they might have involvement.
Yes, there was concern about a previous Texas Parks and Wildlife grant that the city had received for a portion of Nimitz Park to make sure that all those commitments had been met and nothing had shown up during the report.
I thought it was to build the pickleball court, the basketball court. No.
It was to build
The storage back there?
where the basketball
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So in previous years, when they wanted to enclose that area, they could not do that without repaying the grant that was given to the city.
Okay, and that
So-
grant was given, what, a decade ago, or is
It
that
was
expired,
given-
or is
It was
that?
given before I got here in '04, but it was asked probably in 2006, 2007, to enclose that facility.
Okay.
And we could not do it when we went back to the Texas Wildlife, and they said we would have to repay the money that we were given because we had to keep it in the condition
Sure.
that the grant was given for.
Do you know how much that grant was by any chance?
I have no idea.
Okay, now the thing is, if it gets torn down, are we gonna have to pay back that grant?
So what the title commitment report shows is that
Okay. Or, I saw it, I read it, no serious encumbrances, no issues.
So if there had been any sort of requirements that could be imposed by Texas Parks and Wildlife or any
Okay.
part of the park, it would have shown up in the title commitment.
Even on the building, which isn't the land, but, well, I guess, yeah, it is, real property.
But that grant would have been over
Expired,
30 years ago.
So I could
And they're-
imagine.
Yeah, they're
so-
not gonna hold you to a 30-year,
Okay,
you
okay,
know.
okay.
I just can't put, they,
In the late 80s.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't even really mind, and they probably don't even remember us.
So that is one thing
Darn
that
it.
we uncovered through the title report as well, and going through it with Alamo Title, who's who we used for
Sure.
this report. And walking through it, they found some easements and things that exist on the property, nothing major primarily. And again, this is just for Nimitz Park property.
Sure.
You all had a survey,
Already
and
have the
your
survey.
easements identified everything we purchased, your 16 acres next door. But
Right.
Nimitz Park did not have record of it. So, we found some easements and things, nothing abnormal. There was a Nothing.
So for like the gas lines, water lines,
Yeah, but it's not as
AT&T,
clear and easy as that. It's like
who imposed the easement?
an individual who inherited some of the property
Okay.
a long time ago.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
So I don't know, it was a whole thing, but, so we were able to cover basically the documentation that exists on the property.
Okay.
We reviewed it also with our city engineer, and there's nothing major. Again, some of the easements are kind of defunct because they reference roadways and things that don't exist after all this time. Or that, things that didn't come to fruition. I think I saw something in there that was about a water line to the Cibolo Gin Company. I thought, ooh, okay. But so things that just kind of, maybe don't make sense anymore. So the city engineer has said that he thinks that it would be a logical next step to have the property surveyed in its park. That would actually give correct beats and bounds. And some of that matters because you can notice kind of there on the map that the southern portion, there's that kind of dip that extends past that dotted line. We're not actually sure if that is in fact the line of the property. Now this map was pulled up was created from our GIS department based on the meets and bounds within the deed. It's not also reporting the park, but that might not actually, we also have conflicting information.
Sure, more or less is what they always put in those legal. Hey, you can always take a little bit more, it's all right. But again, that's all, you can't do anything back there anyways.
Yeah.
So the engineer has given us an estimate. It would be 4 to 6 weeks and about $6,500 to conduct the ALTA survey of the property, which would include the boundary. It would include a topographic grid, so you can determine more specifically than what was provided during the subcommittee meetings on what the topographic features of the park look like, and all improvements. And then there is an additional $1,200 estimate if you want a meets and bounds description for the site. These would be needed should you choose to sell the property
Of course.
in the future anyhow. To be considered. So that is kind of one of the questions we have for the board tonight, is if you would like to proceed with me of that. And then also to provide you an update that we did reach out to a broker that we work with at JLL to provide us a broker's opinion evaluation on the property. Both the 16 acres as it stands today in one single piece, as well as what it could be with the land swap taken into
Sure.
consideration.
Okay.
They are still working on that estimate, but when we have that, then we will provide that to you as well.
Okay. Do we have any questions? I know there's a lot of data, there's a little history behind it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have pretty much, one decision to make is, we have the LOI approved. We are moving forward with investigating the property,
The survey.
and also to the potential value of what the property would be worth. So just to give you a heads up, when I was talking with city council during a subcommittee, those were the two things that I guaranteed them that we would investigate further. One, to make sure it was sort of doing looking at the validity of the land swap, even if we could do it or not. For instance, if there was an encumbrance on there from the Texas Wildlife, Parks and Wildlife, then we probably would have just stopped and
Yeah.
just moved on
Moved on
with
with
our
what we
plan
had
A.
planned.
So, and then the other one was to be transparent, because one of the city councils, and rightfully so, is really ultimate, at the end of the day, where is going to be the funds to pay for, building the new park?
Yes.
And so, again, there are some estimates out there as far as how much it would cost, but before, I think it would be prudent before this board could commit anything through an agreement or a contract, we would need to understand what would be, our potential revenue from selling some of that land. So, hypothetically, if we could sell that land, okay, so on average, they're saying, let's just say, brand new park, same bells and whistles, just newer, obviously, because it's pretty dated right now. $3 million to fix that entire park,
Did
right?
they expect us to pay the entire thing?
I'm not getting into that details.
Oh, okay.
I'm not getting into that details. I'm just saying, just hypothetically
Yeah.
trying to break it down for you, just in simple terms, right? So hypothetically, if it's $3 million, I'm trying to get the land or evaluation or opinion of the value of that land when it's partitioned out, and obviously I know it's more when you sell it in parcels, how much would that potential be? Obviously, it would be unrealized until we'd actually sell, okay? And see what that would be. Hypothetically, let's say it's $6 million. Well, that's something that I think to move this along, and also too, our third-party consultant actually suggested something like that. I don't know if you caught that. It was only maybe a 30-second snip, right, during that whole conversation we had for about 2 or 3 hours. But he mentioned something like Pearl. I'm not suggesting Pearl, but I'm suggesting something as a centerpiece to gather within Cibolo, right?
What's the total insured value on Nimitz right now, the 16 acres?
The 16.
The total what?
What's the total insured value?
Insured
that
value?
we have?
We purchased the land, so we can go by that. We purchased land for what, a little bit, 3.6 million? Approximately 3.6 million. And so now we're trying to reach out to a professional commercial broker to see what it would look like with just our 16, 17 acres, parceled out.
Right.
Or if we do the land swap and see what it would look like with that. So hypothetically, let's say we can make, with all expenses paid, we can profit, let's say 4 to 5 million. Then I think as the board president, and I think with the board, I think we should suggest to cover most of the cost of the park. I think in good relations, and to move this, because I honestly, if we can make this happen, I believe this is going to be a very good centerpiece for the city of Cibolo and assuage the fears of the payment. Now, of course, we're asking the city to come up with some creative grants and other things and other financing and whatnot, and clearly to fix that park without our involvement, I think they got about a $1.9 million bill right now just to fix everything. Also, we solved a couple parking solutions. I know this is a lot of background. Right now, we have sort of a gentleman's handshake behind the deal as far as allowing them to park on our property during events that they rent out that facility because they have inadequate parking. Well, one of the things that we're going to solve with this whole, if we can come to an actual agreement or a contract, if you will solve the parking solution. We will provide funding for the building, or for the rebuilding of the park. Now, again, the design, the coordination would be the city's responsibility, but then we would provide funds to pay for it at a certain point, right? I mean, if you want a huge 100-foot waterfall that's going to cost $10 million, by all means, that's yours. But we've got the city engineer, he provided reasonable estimates, okay? And based on those estimates, we're going to base on what is the EDC going to contribute. And so if they want to go beyond that, that's their preference, but I think it would be prudent that the EDC would cap it based on what those estimates are in today's dollars,
So
right?
it's just one of the things that the deeds are so old, we're just trying to.
Yes, so right now, is one thing that I suggested was that we, in the furtherance of this negotiation in good faith, that we, as the EDC, would go and survey the property, and also too, as a transparency in good faith, we would go out and get a valuation and see what we could realistically, if we put that land on the market today or in the next 6 months, what could we actually make?
Right.
And then that's gonna drive our decision on how much we could actually contribute to the park. Because I wanna contribute the park, right? I mean, my kids use the park, I use the park, I want the park to look nice, I want it to be a good centerpiece, and a good success story for the city of Cibolo, right? And have a new park.
When do you expect the property appraisal to be completed?
It should be any day. We were hoping that we would have that opinion evaluation for tonight's meeting, but.
Are they asking for money for that?
No,
They're
sir.
not asking for money?
No,
Okay.
sir.
Is there any issues with that, of asking for anything for free?
No, but it's just an opinion, in
Okay.
their professional opinion, so
Okay.
there's no, there's no sort of engineering or
It's
any
not, well, it's like an
design.
appraisal almost, like, well, not necessarily appraisal, but, okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously a question right now, as far as the board's motion, which you would want to have a motion, would be to approve staff to engage with the survey company to do that.
Oh, wait, so I misspoke, they're not doing appraisal, they're just doing a general evaluation of,
Yes,
you
an
know, what that.
estimate of what
okay.
the property value would be,
Where
the
it is
market
right
value.
now. Okay.
Yes, that's the BOV. As far as the survey of the property, they've estimated 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then also too, when is our next meeting with city council? Because I know when we had the letter of intent signed, I want to have another meeting.
It will be sometime,
Please don't say April or May.
January,
January?
January, February
Can we do
timeframe.
January?
It's up to
Can
them.
we?
I can't guarantee that because we have so many meetings already scheduled,
Can you fit it
especially
in?
with master plan and everything else. So we will try our best, but they canceled everything in December, so everything is moved to January. So we will try and get
Can
that
you-
on the.
Can you
We will
give
tr-
me
we
like
will
a
try.
90%
We will-
confidence guarantee between February to or January to February?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because I do not want this to prolong for another year and a half.
Yeah, it's been a long road.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
So,
Now, I wouldn't say we're losing money because we still have an asset which wasn't reflected on our balance sheet because she says she doesn't, but we have about a $3 million property that's on our balance, that's on our books,
so,
which is appreciating value, right? Now, again, with the interest rates out there and, you know, the market's slowing down a little bit. Go ahead there. You have a
so
question?
I'll give you my opinion on
Sure.
the property. So, I believe, if I remember right, this went to referendum for the city, and in general, the residents want this to happen, and this is something that you've been working on. I believe, you know, coming new into this, I'm not going to prevent you from proceeding on this in any way. So
Sure,
the
sure.
the residents want it. I know it's something that the board has wanted. So I'm in favor of proceeding.
So, okay, I appreciate it. So just to clarify, on, the residents voted that they wanted to explore conversations between the EDC, but yes, but again, that would indicate that they would be in favor of it.
Yes.
It wasn't worded that way.
Yes.
But it would assume that that's what the intent was.
Yeah.
Because yes, you're right, that park is dated, we can all agree.
Yes.
And it does need to be fixed. Now, the question is, how much is it gonna be? And there's some little details that we probably need to hash out, hence, that's why I want a meeting, hopefully in January and February, please, Peggy, I'll cross my fingers. Okay, January, February, thank you, ma'am.
If you can keep the rattlesnakes out of there, being from the north, you know, I'll go to the park. But as long as the rattlesnakes are still there, I'm going to stay in my house.
Yeah, I got you. So,
From the south, I don't do rattlesnakes.
now, as far as approving of the survey, do we have any other further questions on the actual land swap? Okay, so can I get a motion to approve staff to engage, you have this worded sort of differently.
Yes, and having it surveyed, but then the second part would be also the meets and bounds description. Those are two separate costs.
Okay,
And then if there was any additional direction at this time.
okay. So I need a motion to,
Approve the survey and meets and bounds.
yes, the meets and bounds.
Okay,
Yeah, this is
okay.
one motion for
Okay.
both of them.
I make a motion to approve direction for our EDC team to move forward with the survey and meets and bounds that we have discussed in this meeting.
That works. Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm refusing myself,
Recuse.
recusing myself
Okay.
from this, because I'm on the subcommittee for the parks on this matter. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
I couldn't say anything.
Yeah, So the motion passes 4-0 with Mr. Hicks recusing himself. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Next would be item F, discussion, direction, and/or action regarding next steps for EV charging station to the city-owned parking lot on South Main Street. It turns down the grant up.
Yeah.
Right, that's another grant.
Hello.
Hello.
So for our new board members, as you can see, we have a lot going on right now. So this should hopefully be the last discussion for something else that's ongoing right now. So just as kind of a refresher, so the CDC applied for the GVEC Power Up grant for this past application cycle, which was for October. To assist in the costs of installing EV charging stations at the city-owned parking lot, which is located downtown at 107 South Main Street. The grant funding is up to $20,000. And so what happened is that staff, we submitted our application in August for consideration of the grant in October. The first week of October, we found out that we were not chosen for this application cycle. We did have our grant analysts essentially reach out to the administrator for the GVC grant to kind of get some insight as to maybe why we weren't chosen for this cycle. So I kind of wanted to share that insight with you guys and have some discussion on that here in a second. So for this grant cycle, there were 8 projects total that were awarded for the grant, and our project was prioritized as number 11. So we were close. But some feedback that we were given on kind of why we didn't make the cut was a couple different areas. The first being that the grant is based on priority or need. So at the end of the day, there were projects in that application cycle that demonstrated that more. So for example, I think one of the grantees that got awarded that during that application cycle was another city's fire department needed bunker gear. So of course, that would take priority over EV charging stations in that case. Another example as to why I guess our ranking was a little bit lower was the grant scoring panel was a bit divided on their views of EV charging stations. Some were very excited about the project, and some kind of still weren't really sold on the idea of EV charging stations. The last kind of bit of insight is the grant administrator let us know that overall, our application was very strong. It was very orderly. It looked great. But compared to others who had applied, we were kind of lacking in the letter of support area. I believe our application maybe had anywhere from 5 to 6 letters of support versus others that were chosen kind of above us had anywhere from 20 or more letters of support. So that was something else that kind of set them aside as well. For you to reference, the next grant cycle that has applications due is going to be in mid-February for grant consideration in April. So with that being the case, the questions for you guys and kind of some discussion that we can have regarding that. Firstly is, does the board wish to proceed with applying again in that next application cycle, which is going to be due in February for us to submit an updated application? Or does the board wish to proceed with, internally we're calling this Project Electrode, proceed with Project Electrode with the budget set aside for the installation of EV charging stations without grant assistance? So to give you some reference on that, for this new fiscal year, we did decide with the board that we were going to budget $45,000 from the capital outlay budget in case this did happen, just to be proactive with it. So with that, I kind of want to turn it over to you guys for discussion on kind of how we want to move forward with doing this project, either by applying for the grant again or maybe just proceeding forward with what we have budgeted for this fiscal year.
For next fiscal year. Oh, yeah, for FY24.
Yeah.
So, any discussions?
I mean, do we not want to go for the grant again? Is it close? Not close? Is there possibly that we can get it again?
I mean, there's always a possibility that there could, again, given the feedback we were given, we can obviously build on our application this next time to better our chances. So I think the biggest priority would be getting additional letters of support compared to last time, which, we may reach out to all of you guys to get. But
I got 5.
Hey, there's 5 right there.
I got a letter part, so.
But I would say the factor that's most out of our control is based on who's applying, who may have more need based on that. And then again, I'm not sure if every time the grant application cycle goes through, if there's a new grant panel every time. So there may be that risk too of opinions on EV charging stations as a concept as well.
So I have a question just on the intent of this project. So if the project's roughly $45,000 that we set aside, is this going to drive any revenue to the city as far as are people going to be paying for these chargers, or is it a liability that we're paying the electricity because GVC probably isn't going to give us the electricity for free? And what's the ongoing maintenance of these chargers if the city or the EDC owns them? And then the last, I guess, question would be, once again, going back to that intent, because if I have an electric car, generally I should charge it at home. So is this for the tourist? Is this for, putting it where we have other restaurants? You see them a lot in H-E-B's parking lot because I can go grocery shopping while my car is charging. So I'm just trying to figure out what the intent was when we initiated this conversation.
We had a citizen come to us with this idea, and we saw the GVC grant, or somebody did, I forget who, and then we proceeded to see if we can't get the grant for this. As a citizen came up and talked about it, that's what originally started this whole conversation.
We have a small business association for downtown. They also brought it up, and our thought was, like, while everyone should have a charging station at home, a lot of people don't. And then, so, and we can't get someone, you know, and the thought was, you know, if I go to HEB and I charge my station, I can go shopping. Well, if you come to downtown, you can utilize our small businesses. We have, well, Old Main is down temporarily, but we have the Mill, we have Ernie's, we have places where they can go, and we have restaurants. So that will bring them down to charge, but while they're here, hopefully they will spend money in our downtown area. So.
But you do bring valid points, and I asked that
Yes, we
during
did.
in
He
the
did
very
brought that up
beginning,
before.
was one, maintenance, and also two, profit sharing. You're correct. Now, of course, we would be paying for EV stations that are gonna be on city property, right? And so, you're right, GVEC is not gonna give us free electricity, nor is the EDC gonna pay for electricity.
Right.
And the city, I could probably, you know, if I had a gainer, they probably wouldn't either, right? So, you're right, it's probably gonna be the market rate, whatever the case may be, and that profit would, will that come back to the EDC to repay us for the investment and then go back to the city? Those are things that we're gonna have to discuss, okay? Now, my suggestion is, I think we should just table it until the next, grant application.
Cycle.
Or the grant cycle, because, you know, I see some electric vehicles, but not overwhelmingly to the point where I think we should, you know, and, you know, do a capital investment. I think we should wait for the grant. That's my opinion, but, you know, I mean, we're open for discussion.
And I will say,
I mean,
see more and
I
more.
agree with you on just moving it to the next.
Table it to the next grant cycle.
Yeah.
And I did, from a business side, I did just want to provide some quick insight as well.
Sure.
We did get a call from one of our businesses who had some, you know, personnel in town for business matters, and they did ask about charging stations nearby. We did have to refer them to nearby cities in order to get that resource, but just to put it on your radar that there is needs that are out there that's been relayed to us from businesses specifically, just so you're aware.
And I see more and more electric vehicles, and really, from what I understand, I was looking at a house that had it installed. It's quite costly to get your own charging station
is.
in your house, so I don't know that a lot of people that should have them do, because they do take advantage of going to HEB and other places where they offer it.
So I have plenty of friends that have Teslas, you know, and, you know, to a certain extent, you know, as a taxpayer, if I'm going to buy a Tesla, I'm going to find a way to support owning that Tesla. So if I can't afford the charger at my house, I shouldn't have bought that to begin with. That's my opinion.
Right.
But when it comes down to, you know, the revenue side of things, I'm looking at, if we can do this, as much net neutral as possible is where I would be voting in favor. If we could do it for, you know, 0-0, we're good to go. If we can make money, well, that's awesome. But, you know, there is a lot of benefit to having it, especially, you know, if I'm parking right across the street, I'm going to walk down and get some ice cream. I'm going to go, you know, I'm not going to say I'm going to go to the bar. You know, I'm going to get an ice cream cone. So I am going to support those local type establishments, and there is some economic benefit to it. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't an obscene liability. So
Right.
I'm in agreement with you that if we can table it till we have the opportunity to get a grant, that's great. If we need to vote on something now so that we know we're going to apply for the grant, you know, that's fine, but
So what we would do, just having this direction, we would come back in the January meeting, I believe that time frame would work, with the application, and at that time, the board would just give us the official vote to approve and submit for that February submittal date.
So can we table it until January?
You don't even necessarily need to table it, we just needed to know if you wanted us to proceed with
Okay, so-
installing them, essentially.
Yeah, I have a question. I agree, because I think if a grant is available, then why not? If it could possibly be available. But I'm just curious, I have a couple of questions. When the grant was, you know, written and submitted, did it include, or was it spec'd out like potential partnerships with who would provide like the charging stations, and where you would procure the charging stations and things like that? Because I'm always looking at, you know, I know there are a lot of startups and things like that, and opportunities to do with women and minority-owned businesses that are getting into that kind of technology, and I'm just always
Yeah.
thinking about opportunities to promote Cibolo with partnering
Right.
with those new technology type companies. So that was one, and then the other thing in my mind when I think of charging stations and hearing about the main street and downtown and things like that, like I think it makes sense, but just my personal opinion, it sounds like it should be part of a larger plan. You know what I mean? Like we're wanting to do this new technology, and I think it helps advertise Cibolo as a very technology forward place, but not just for the sake of having them, right? Like we have data on, you know, how many people are driving electric vehicles and how many people are we seeing here. And I think it makes sense to do. I'm sure that data is there, but just as a larger, you know, sort of plan. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, that absolutely makes sense. And we have a fabulous grants analyst, Michelle Martinez, that helped put together the grant application for this. And she's so great at kind of painting that picture, telling that story. And so she touched a lot on, you know, how a project like this kind of goes towards the future as far as infrastructure goes for our region and how EV charging stations fit into that. And again, obviously that's something that we can talk in more detail in January when we bring back the application and kind of talk more about what that narrative looks like, if there's any feedback that you would have on that. As far as the vendors for the charging station, obviously, you know, our finance department has their own kind of procedure on,
Right.
you know, once this is an approved project and we are going forward with it, grant or not, we would have to go out procurement wise and, you know, follow that process with the RFP or RFQ, however
Sure.
they go forward with that. But for the sake of the grant application, we did have to include an estimated cost for the project, and the most streamlined way of doing that was to get costs from GEC, the power supplier, and grant administrator for it. So I did include in the packet there kind of the estimate that they gave us based on that, which was 3 level 2 car charging stations, as well as the labor and material for providing the service and wiring for the charging stations to be in that area. Obviously, depending on the vendor we go through, that cost would fluctuate, right? But
Right.
it was kind of a starter for us as far as being able to submit the application and have kind of somewhere to start with the pricing for what those charging stations.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's a very strong in a grant when you can show like a hub and spoke, right? So this is going to be a ripple effect because Cibolo not only supports small business, but we partner with new technologies and up and coming, you know, new investors and, you know, whatever, however it would shake out. But I think that even the intent to do that, whether that ends up happening or if it went to a bid or, you know, whatever, something like that. But I think positioning that we are, you know, we want to support those emerging businesses. And, you know, small businesses could mean it's $100 million business, you know what I mean? So I just think that's very strong. And if you guys could maybe kind of think about that and maybe how, if you could think about putting some language around that, like we would maybe look at alternative, you know, not just the big companies, but how we can partner with startups and things like that that might be in that type of technology as well. And that helps to drive the type of residents and new people and, you know, those types of things, because people are interested in knowing that we are, you know, a city that is forward and, you know, is thinking ahead on those types of things. So I would think that would be awesome if you sent that to me.
No worries, yeah, and we'll be glad to in January when we bring that grant application back, any feedback you guys have on there or anything like that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
I guess the direction is we're going to go ahead and wait and submit it into the February cycle of the grant, and we will go ahead and put it on the January agenda. All right, perfect, thank you.
I know.
Knocking it out, man. Okay, unfortunately, on item H, I was not there at the last master plan meeting. I had a conflict. Kelsey, do you want to speak to it, or do we just want to table it till January? Is there any much to really say about it, or?
I don't know, can I talk about that since I'm on it for the parks?
Okay,
Yeah.
and I will. I'll be very fast. So the master plan committee did meet last week. Primarily went over some items on the preferred scenario map, looking at land use type and character types, not necessarily zoning, but in general, different versions or areas of the city. What's the overall look and feel? What makes sense as far as what's going on within the future of the city? They have their next meeting on November 30th. Anyone is welcome to attend. Usually it's live streamed. Unfortunately, we ran into issues with the AV equipment where at the last meeting the video was working but no audio. So if you're really good at reading lips from the side, you might know what's going on, but unfortunately it wasn't capturing the audio. But November 30th will be the next meeting. They'll continue on some of the feedback that they heard on those preferred scenarios, the place types, and then we'll also be talking about the master thoroughfare plan, so our roads and what it makes sense for north and south connectivity as well as east and west.
Okay, thank you. Okay, discussion, direction, and/or action involving updates regarding the Cibolo EDC strategic plan project. And this would be the strategic plan advisory committee, which I know it's Justin and
Myself,
Tricia.
but we have not met since
Okay.
we came together with the city hall
Okay.
and the EDC, so it's nothing new, just what you
Nothing
guys
new.
heard there.
But also too, that is the, what was his name again? Kyle, I'm sorry. Who briefed us last week.
Okay.
He's
Yes.
probably looking at this, watching you.
That's
now.
okay.
Forget it.
That's okay. Kyle, forgive me. Okay. Do you have any questions or anything? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move next.
That's another one of those meetings that we're trying to get scheduled for early next year, another joint meeting with the EDC and the city council, specifically centered around those target industries that questions were coming up on.
Sure, sure. And then also to talking about the subcommittee, can we put that in on January's agenda? As far as expanding the subcommittee, we only have 2 members.
Oh, yes,
I would
yes,
like
yes.
to include, yep, and so, perfect, get them involved.
Perfect, yeah.
Okay. That's your words, not mine. Okay, discussion, direction, and/or action regarding holding the Cibolo EDC regular call meeting tentatively scheduled for December. I am suggesting as the president that we
You skipped one.
Jay? Yeah, you
Jay.
skipped
Oh,
Jay.
I'm sorry.
The corridor, I-10.
Discussion, direction, and/or action involving updates regarding the Cibolo EDC Interstate 10 Corridor Study Project and the advisory committee. I don't think have you met?
We have.
You have met, okay.
We did.
Please.
So we met last week on Wednesday. We did an in-person meeting. It was a lot of info. But so basically, they've kind of broken up the portion of the I-10 corridor that belongs to Cibolo into like 3 areas. One of the really big things I think is like our connections. And so one, we thought Hackerville would come all the way down. Now it's not. So we've kind of pivoted a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong. To kind of make Bolden, what's it called?
Yeah.
Bolton a little bit more accessible. But one thing we talked about, like, what do we want in each section? So, like, in the first section, it's kind of to the west, maybe it's a lot of green space. We can't do anything with it, so we might make it more like, hiking trails and just things where people can get out. We talked about doing some light industrial kind of in the middle. We talked about mixed use, residential and commercial. There was a lot of kind of big view. We didn't really we talked a little bit about what we want there, but it was basically, they kind of broke it up into 3 sections, and like we can focus on each section and what we can do in that section. And I will tell you that first section, not a whole lot's going to be happening there.
Because it's a flood zone.
It's flood zone, so it's going to be green. And then that middle section maybe, we have some on one side of the highway and not so much on the other. But we talked about things that we could put there. Do we want to, have factories there? And one thing I thought was really good, as we do a mixed use and we have residential, some of the things we could try and get there might be a grocery store or an emergency medical. Those are the kind of things that those people that live out there, if we want people to move out there, those are the kind of things we want to have out there. We talked about making it look good. We talked about different things that we could do. Laura can probably,
No, that was great. The only other thing I was going to add is I just wanted to let y'all know that we also, staff-wise, had a phone call with Kyle with RKG for our strategic plan, and with Kimley Horn, who's doing the I-10 corridor study. And it was after our joint meeting, and so RKG has shared the findings of what they presented at that joint meeting with Kimley Horn. And so the next step, now that we have our feedback from our meeting last week with Patricia and Justin, is that Kimley Horn is going to take into account what the market looks like and then make adjustments accordingly. So just so y'all know, everybody is playing all together in the sandbox and making sure that we're all driving toward a singular goal. So
Nice.
And
there'll be no
consistent with city
Yeah.
council's vision.
Yeah.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Now, I know one of the city council meetings that Roadrunner Towing was looking at moving out in that direction. Do you know if that's still planned out that way, or
Say that again?
the Roadrunner Towing? Okay, so
Yeah, we can't
nothing
go
has
too much
been
into it
approved.
because that's not specific
on-
to this,
Oh,
but it
sorry,
is in
my
progress.
apologies.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I was just looking at the plan and so forth. Of
Yeah.
Who else is going to
Well,
be
I
out
guess
there?
I didn't really talk about sort of housekeeping. So again, being new board members, we really can't deviate off of the agenda.
Yep.
So how it's written, so something like that would be, you know, we'd have to tell you that we can't talk about it.
I understand.
Yeah, so. But it's a great conversation, and then you go to, I think, as they said, it's gonna be on the agenda for the city.
Yeah, I was just looking at the different types of businesses that would be out there,
Sure.
what else we'd want to add as far as the planning. So that's
Sure.
not specific to them, but just
I
that.
see,
So,
I see.
my apologies.
No, 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 you're
Yep.
fine. No, you're fine. I did the same thing, actually. I think Robert was like, hey, stop talking, Mark. I was like, all right.
Yep.
Okay, any other further discussion on the I-10 corridor study? And also, two, on the agenda, please, I would like to have on the agenda for a subcommittee, to add subcommittee members to that, because right now we only have two. Thank you.
Add members.
Okay, and then, section K, discussion, direction, or action regarding holding the Cibolo EDC regular call meeting tentatively scheduled for December 21st. My suggestion is to make that January 2024.
So,
It's 3 days before Christmas, or 4 days before.
to be transparent,
Yes.
I cannot attend the January meeting.
Okay. Okay.
So I do have an obligation I can't get out of. So
Okay,
I don't know
that's
if that
perfectly okay.
affects the decision of January or not, but,
No.
or December.
We have so many. I think.
We actually almost got a full board, so we'll be perfectly fine.
Okay.
I appreciate it, though. We'll have a quorum.
Yes.
Is what I mean.
We were down to a point where nobody could not be here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you guys okay with that?
I'm cool with moving it. Yep.
You okay?
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, I really was looking forward to seeing you guys, for sure.
We'll wait till January after New Year's.
And Marcus, just so you
I'll
know,
be
so
here.
it wouldn't be it wouldn't be moving the meeting, it's simply canceling the
Canceling.
December meeting.
Okay, we'll just go ahead and cancel the December meeting then.
Okay,
Do you
thank
need a
you.
motion for that, or just direction?
I would like a motion, please.
You'd like a motion?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Can I get a motion, please?
Can I get a motion to cancel the December 21st, 2023 EDC meeting?
Can I get a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Does
Does that work?
I think I make sure it's even on.
Okay, perfect. Now.
In the meeting, and then.
Executive
No, we're going to
session?
executive session. Okay, so we want to do executive session? Okay, the time is, I'm going to say 9:49.
No, no, no.
Or 8:50, I'm
It's
sorry,
8:50.
8:50.
I was like,
The time is
It's not like we
8:50. Okay, item number 9, executive session. The time is 8:51. The Cibolo Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors, as authorized by the sections 551.071 and 551.087 of the Texas Local Government Code, Texas Open Meetings Act, will in closed session either, 1, consult with the Cibolo EDC's attorney regarding legal issues involving economic development negotiations, offers, and related matters from and/or to business prospects within the city of Cibolo, Texas, and/or 2, deliberate regarding A, commercial or financial information that the Cibolo EDC has received from a business prospect that the Cibolo EDC seeks to have locate, stay, or expand within the city of Cibolo, Texas, and with which the Cibolo EDC is conducting economic development negotiations, or B, the offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect. Subsection A, items for future agendas. I asked,
Yeah, you added a couple things.
yes, I added a couple things, yes, please, for the subcommittees, put that in the January for us.
And then we're coming back with the grant for the GVC.
Yep, the
That's the
grant,
next one,
grant.
right? Okay.
And
Is
then,
there something else?
anything else? Would you guys like to have anything else on the agenda, or any thoughts?
I have nothing at the
No?
moment.
Not at this time.
Nope. Okay. And then number 12 is set a date time for the next meeting, tentatively
The next meeting would now be
January
January
18th, 2024 at 6:30 PM. City
Oh,
Hall,
nice.
perfect, perfect.
Back in our building.
And then item 13, I need to get a motion for adjournment.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I got a motion, get a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.